You're watching Football Daily, and today we're looking at the 10 longest serving managers in the history of football. 10. David Moyes. First up is David Moyes, whose move to Manchester United in 2013 brought an end to a successful 11 years at Everton. The Scot won a title with Celtic as a centre-back and finished his playing days at Preston North End, where he was made manager in 1998. 4 years later, he was poached by Everton and won the Manager of the Year award 3 times whilst at Goodison. The Toffees reached 4th place and the Champions League under Moyes, but he couldn't resist the United job and was rewarded with unemployment 10 months later. 9. John Coleman. John Coleman never made it to the top level as a player, but had a decorated career in non-league football, scoring over 500 goals over 2 decades. But his greatest achievements came as manager of Accrington Stanley. When Coleman took over in 1999, the club was stuck in the Northern Premier League, but over the next 12 and a half years, they were promoted 3 times, eventually reaching League Two, where they have been since 2006. Coleman left for Rochdale in 2012, but is now once again back in Accrington, and at only 53 years old, he could have a few decades left as Stanley boss. 8. Thomas Schaaf. Thomas Schaaf was a one-club man. Spending his whole playing career at Werder Bremen, he also devoted himself after retirement, working his way up from coach of the under-17s to first-team manager. He stayed in the job for 14 years, winning the Bundesliga and Cup double in 2004, and departed in 2013 after 41 years with the club. His record stands at 645 games, 308 wins and 6 appearances in the Champions League. And since leaving, he's coached Eintracht Frankfurt and Hanover. 7. Valery Lobanovsky. Ukraine's most successful manager of all time, Lobanovsky trained in thermal engineering while a player, and he brought a scientific rigour to his management. He spent 2 terms and 21 years altogether as Kiev boss, winning 12 league titles and the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, despite Soviet law prohibiting him from signing foreign players. His influence was so great that after Milan won the 2003 Champions League, former player Andrei Shevchenko went to Kiev and placed his winner's medal on Lobanovsky's grave. 6. Arsene Wenger. The Gunners poached Arsene Wenger in 1996 from the Japanese J-League, and the Frenchman quickly set about a revolution upon his arrival at Highbury. He brought new training methods, set about creating diet plans, and changed the entire face of English football by putting a stop to the drinking culture at the club. Since then, Wenger has won over 600 games, 3 Premier League titles, and back-to-back FA Cups. Nevertheless, he still has his critics, especially as he hasn't won the league for 12 years and has struggled to sign the players many fans want. 5. Dario Gradi. Crewe Alexandra's legendary Italian boss, Dario Gradi spent 24 years in the hot seat during a career that became iconic in the lower tiers of English football. Gradi arrived at Crewe after a poor spell at Crystal Palace that eventually led to his resignation, but since joining the club he has never left. Spending 24 years in charge, his side were never the most successful, however he did receive accolades for his ability to bring young players through the academy. 4. Ignacio Correda. Ignacio Correda is a name many of you will never have heard, but the 65-year-old managed the Spanish women's national side for an astonishing 27 years. Despite never winning a major trophy, Correda took charge when the side was formed and helped it transform with the times and become World Cup regulars. However, his departure came under strange circumstances. The squad released a combined statement to the press claiming that they needed to be taken in a new direction and that despite 27 years in charge, he was no longer the right man. 3. Alex Ferguson. Arguably the greatest manager ever to enter the dugout, the godfather of Old Trafford arrived in Manchester from Aberdeen, having already secured 11 trophies with the Scottish side. After taking charge of the Red Devils, he quickly set about revamping the entire club. From the scouting department to the stadium, he developed United into one of the world's biggest sides. With an incredible knack of creating great team after great team, SAF took home 13 Premier League titles, 5 FA Cups and 2 Champions Leagues. 2. Ronnie McFall. Irish football has long slipped under the radar in terms of quality, but nevertheless, the league has still produced some truly fantastic players and managers. One you probably won't have heard of is Ronnie McFall, who spent 30 years at Portadown, turning their fortunes from a small town club into title league holders. McFall celebrated his 1000th game in charge of the club in 2015 before finally retiring in 2016 after winning 28 major honours with the Ports. Number 1. Guy Roux. Auxerre may not be the strongest side in the history of French football, but their ex-boss Guy Roux certainly has a claim for being the greatest manager. Having joined in 1961, the Frenchman managed over 2,000 games, including a European record of 890 top-tier league matches. After 44 years in charge and one stint international service, Guy Roux has become one of French sport's most iconic figures.